That's what I'd like to discuss today, how America is leading in today's world. I will speak briefly about the changes taking root across the Middle East. And I've spent much of the last 2 decades working on Middle East policy for then Senator Biden when he was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and for President Obama at the White House for 5 years. But in my current job, I oversee a portfolio that extends beyond the Middle East. And I think it's important, as President Obama likes to say, to not only focus on the headlines, but also the trend lines. And so today, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about some of our other interests, particularly in Asia. Let me start with the greatest threats to our national security, which emanate from the Middle East. Having worked closely with President Obama at the White House for 5 years, I can tell you that his highest priority is the security of the American people. And he has been aggressive in taking the fight to terrorists who threaten the United States and our interests. But just as our efforts to combat terrorism have evolved, so have our enemies. Today, ISIL, a terrorist group that beheads and crucifies and rapes and burns alive those who oppose its barbaric ideology, has seized territory in western Iraq and eastern Syria. Last year, President Obama outlined a comprehensive strategy that involves working with the government of Iraq, the moderate opposition in Syria, and an international coalition of over 60 nations to degrade and to ultimately defeat ISIL. The coalition, including several Arab states, has conducted over 3,000 airstrikes against ISIL terrorists. These strikes have had a significant impact, taking out thousands of ISIL fighters, numerous commanders, nearly 1,500 vehicles and tanks, over 100 artillery and mortar positions, and nearly 3,400 fighting positions, training camps, and bunkers in Iraq and Syria. The strikes have damaged close to 200 oil and gas facilities, infrastructure that helps to fund ISIL's terror. We've begun training Iraqi army brigades at 4 sites in Iraq, and we've helped enable more than 24 ground operations against ISIL strongholds across Iraq. The cumulative effect of all of this has been substantial. The allure of the so-called caliphate has been shattered. ISIL can no longer operate freely in roughly 25% of the populated areas of Iraqi territory, where they once could. Simply put, its momentum has been blunted. But this is not just a military effort. Together with our coalition partners, we are using all elements of our power in this fight, because that's how America must lead in today's world. Yes, we're using our military might. We're building the capabilities of our partners in the region, but we're also working to cut off ISIL's financing, to stabilize Iraqi communities, to vet and train moderate Syrian opposition members. And we're working to counter ISIL's ideology and propaganda. This is a whole of government effort, and it must be for us to succeed. In South Asia, we're strengthening our security, economic, and people-to-people ties with India. I actually traveled to New Delhi for very productive talks last year. And President Obama made an historic visit on India's Republic Day. That visit made President Obama the first sitting president to have visited India twice during his presidency. And even while India is one of the world's oldest civilizations, it has the world's most young people, with a median age of 27 and 600 million people under the age of 25. As the oldest and largest democracies, the United States and India are seeing a natural convergence, not only of our values, but also of our vision for the future. In my view, India's revival and deepening US-India ties are among the most significant strategic developments of the past several years. They will shape the global balance of power for many years to come. In East Asia, my team recently negotiated defense agreements with the Republic of Korea, the Philippines, and Australia. We're deepening our ties with Singapore and looking to broaden our partnerships with Malaysia and Indonesia. We're especially focused on building the capabilities of these and other countries so they can help keep trade routes open, and also so that we can respond to natural disasters, improve readiness, and continue to be a stabilizing force in the region. Earlier this year, I visited Vietnam, as we mark 20 years of normalized diplomatic relations. It's an historic and exciting time in that relationship. We're expanding trade, we're deepening our security relationship, and thousands of American and Vietnamese students are studying abroad, forging friendships and exchanging ideas and cultures, dreaming of the future rather than being shackled by the past.
I think it would be a fallacy to see things exclusively through that sectarian dimension in the Middle East. And I think if you talk with people in the region, they will tell you the same thing. Many of them see things in other terms as well. Islamist versus secular, radical versus moderate, if you will. There are ethnic fault lines as well. There are many things going on in the region. There are also challenges of governance in many places that have contributed to turmoil in certain places. When I first went to Iraq soon after the invasion, and we engaged with a lot of Iraqi leaders, many of them actually chafed at some of the terms that they heard bandied about in our media of sects, Sunni Shia. Many of them refused to be identified by their sect. And so I think there's a lot more that is going on there besides that, but I wouldn't exclude it as a dimension of the crisis. But I think, it's better to look at it in a broader sense, and also to look at some of the challenges we face there from some of these other perspectives, including some of the threats that are being you find emanating from non-state actors against governments, how you see groups like ISIL moving into ungoverned space, and some of the challenges of governance. Russia has taken a number of illegal and aggressive actions in Ukraine, and we have confronted those. We've confronted them through politically and diplomatically. We've also been providing a great deal of assistance, non-lethal defensive assistance to Ukraine. And we have also worked with our European partners and others to impose a very tough set of sanctions on Russia for its violation of international rules, which is basically what's occurred there. So that's what we've done specifically in response to this crisis. As you can imagine, Russia's moves there have ignited some degree of concern amongst some of our partners in NATO, especially on the eastern fringes of the alliance. And we've done a number of actions there to try to help reassure our partners. You heard President Obama, when he went to Estonia, reiterate our commitments under Article 5 of the Washington Treaty. And that is our commitment to come to the defense of our NATO allies. And that, we believe, has had a stabilizing effect and a reassuring effect on those countries. We do seek a constructive relationship with China. And the way Secretary Kerry talks about it, if you look at some of the big challenges we face in the world, you can't imagine tackling them without a productive relationship between the United States and China. And we've tried to work towards that. And I think we've made a lot of progress. One, where we're able to work on challenges. For example, the agreement that was announced last year on climate change, I think, represents what we were able to achieve together. We also are able, in that relationship, though, to be able to talk openly about our differences without that having a cascading effect and undermining the entire relationship. We've also gotten to that level of maturity in the relationship. And we talk to them about various things, whether it's cyber issues or climate change, as again, is on the positive side, but cyber issues, intellectual property, things like that, which are more contentious. We are able to do that in a constructive framework. And that's one that we want to keep in motion. The engagement of the American people is exceptionally important. And activism, the fact that people are here, I think, suggests that the group sitting here before me is certainly engaged and active. But your involvement with political leaders, making your views known, getting out there, I think, is extremely important to making sure that America does continue to lead. That's one. Two, I think that we as a country can really achieve great things. I really think it's important that we retain our optimism. Yes, there are challenges in the world. Yes, the Middle East looks very messy right now. I think it's incredibly important to remember what sets us apart as Americans, is that we have always dealt with tough situations. We've always kept our optimism, and we've always found a way to come together. And when we come together and we find ways to overcome our differences at home, and there's always been, I believe, if you will, on foreign policy, I've never really seen it as a partisan issue. It should never become a partisan issue. Our engagement in the world, I really believe in the old adage of Senator Vandenberg that politics should stop at the water's edge. And I think if we're able to work together, we will be serving ourselves very well. We'll be serving the next generation of Americans, who I think we have to point in the direction of that optimistic spirit and that spirit of engagement in the world. And we'll be able to help young generations as well.